It's not really made for photography, but there are a few key reasons why I had a great time using my GoPro for street photography. First, a few of my favourite shots. I actually had a lot of fun using this action camera for street photography, and I was actually really excited about giving it a try. So I headed up to Edinburgh's Royal Mile, which at the time was in full swing with the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and so it was absolutely packed with people. And more people mean more photo opportunities. One of the first reasons I realised how great it is to use a GoPro for photography like this is that it is just so small. Way smaller than my usual Canon R5 or even my Leica Q3. So it basically meant I can just point it around wherever I see an opportunity and snap away. And honestly, that small size is the main benefit, because it also means that people simply don't notice you taking photos. You've got this tiny little square in your hand, and for the most part, people don't even see it as a camera. It's not like you've got some big DSLR with an enormous zoom lens that you're pointing in someone's face. That kind of setup can often feel a little bit intimidating to people. They'll certainly notice you, and if you're trying to take candid photos, they'll probably stop whatever they're doing and wonder why you're pointing that big old lens at them. With this, they don't even see.
Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare without the never got bits.
Keep in mind as well that basically everyone on the Royal Mile is also carrying a camera and taking photos of each other, so everyone's in each other's photos and people aren't really paying attention to photographers anyway, so you're even more inconspicuous using something like this. So it's surprisingly good for just carrying around to get truly candid moments, like this family with their food, or these two watching a street performance. And certainly when I captured this moment of these two sharing an ice cream. I do think with a lot of these photos I would have struggled to have got them if I was pointing a big camera with a big wide angle lens up in someone's business. But this, no problem. It helps actually that it's not really designed for photography. I mean, not really. It's a video camera first and foremost. It's the ones that people put on their bike handlebars or on their helmets and then hurl themselves down mountains. But when you think stills camera, you don't really think of a GoPro. But it does have an actual stills camera mode, but it is pretty basic. There are a few settings, but it's mostly just exposure compensation and white balance. But I was shooting in RAW anyway, so I didn't even need to adjust the white balance. But because it is just point and click, it makes it so easy to capture those split-second moments. Now this is specifically the GoPro Hero 12 Black that I'm using, but you would get basically the same results using an earlier GoPro or the latest 13 Black or the DJI Osmo 5 or whatever it is that they're up to, because most of the advanced features tend to come in the form of stabilization and video tools, and actually the stills camera side of it hasn't really come on all that much in the past few generations. I've also really enjoyed playing around with the super wide angle view of it. I think it's about a 12mm equivalent if you're on a 35mm camera, so we are talking extreme wide angle. And that does mean you get quite a lot of distortion in your images, and while to an extent you can correct that in Lightroom, I actually kind of like leaving it as it is and really emphasizing the subjects using that wide angle distortion. You get quite a dramatic look, and I think it suits their style of photography sometimes. This person's hands are certainly more exaggerated because of that angle, while this guy has much more of a sense of isolation in this scene. And same thing with this guy and his sign. But it's a field of view that absolutely demands you get much more up close to your subject. If you take a shot far away from your subject, then they're just going to be a couple of pixels in amongst the scene. So you really do have to get up in people's space to make the most of the field of view of this thing. But as a result of that, the photos that you get actually really put you, the viewer, into the scene. I look back at some of these photos and I really feel there's almost 3D depth to them. It's like I'm standing there looking at this scene again, rather than taking them from a distance and feeling like I'm simply observing as an outsider. I usually prefer a 35 or a 50mm focal length, or the sweet spot of the 43mm on my Leica Q3. And with those, I tend to shoot from much more of a distance. And normally I love doing that because it allows me to not only take the photo of the subject, but actually capture a lot of the context around them. But by going super wide angle, you kind of get a little bit of both. You get to focus in on that subject, filling them in the frame, but actually still getting a lot of the context in the scene where they're standing. But of course, there are some drawbacks. I mean, for me, it is a bit too wide. In quite a few photos, you can see in the corner my bag or my coat sleeve, simply because I didn't really realize that I had them in shot. Honestly, I don't really think it spoils the image all that much, but I can't really crop it out either. Largely because the actual quality of the images isn't that great. The dynamic range is brilliant, and that's great because I remember on earlier GoPros it was always pretty poor. It would blow out highlights very quickly. But actually these files look lovely. It's the fine details where I find things lacking. Full screen is not a problem, but when you really get up close on some of the smaller details and you really start to notice that it's got that weird over-sharpening stuff that kind of makes things look a little bit like an oil painting. So if I start cropping in too much, then that lack of quality is really going to be noticeable. As a result, most of these photos are pretty much in the same cropping that it was when I took them. Other downside is that you can't really compose your scenes properly. Okay, I mean, you can. There is a screen, of course, so you can spend the time actually holding it like a regular camera and trying to wait for the right moment. But to preserve battery life, I turn this back screen off anyway, so I'm mostly shooting blind. Sometimes I try to be a little bit conscious of my framing, but otherwise I was kind of relying on that ultra wide angle view to allow me simply just to vaguely point the camera in the right direction of a subject when I saw it and quickly get the shot. It's much more of a spray and pray approach, which is not normally how I tend to operate, but also can be really good, particularly when you're in such a chaotic place like the Royal Mile, where there are so many little things happening all the time and you simply want to try and capture as much as you can. It's just a very different way of working to how I normally do, and to be honest, I don't hate it, but I definitely think it relies on having crowds, on having so much to actually point the camera towards. The Royal Mile was so busy, so chaotic, so full of vibrance and life, with not just the performers themselves on the street doing, I don't know, juggling, dancing, street magic, whatever it was, but full of all the tourists, full of people handing out flyers or playing instruments or whatever it is. So there's so much to see. And everyone's getting in on the spirit, everyone's having an amazing time, everyone's taking photos of everything. So you are really just part of that same like festival vibe. If I was in the same spot on a random rainy Tuesday in November, there are going to be far fewer people there and far fewer things actually going on to take photos. But it made me think that this would be really good for taking to outdoor events. I'm thinking maybe you're at a sports game in an arena and maybe not taking photos of the sport itself, whatever that is, maybe it's football or baseball or whatever, but actually instead turning it round and filling the frame with the roars and cheers of the crowd as a team's point is scored. You can tell I'm really not into sport. Could have definitely picked a better example. Music! I love music. Love going to gigs. Fine, let's go with that. You could be pointing it round and capturing people as they're singing along, hands in the air. And so you could definitely get that same thing of having the person nice and up close, using that wide angle lens at capturing loads of other people as well. Kind of did something similar when I just took the phone along to the Taylor Swift Eras tour and tried to capture some shots of people actually enjoying the show. And I think something like this with the wide-angle lens would be great for that kind of photography as well. So will I do this again? Honestly, I might. At first, I kind of wanted to do it as a bit of an experiment, a little bit, frankly, of a novelty, a bit of a gimmick, something to do for my channel and something because I was honestly a little bit curious about what would happen. But I do like the results. They give a totally different look to what I normally shoot. I don't think I'd rush out to spend the money on buying a 12mm lens for my Canon R5, but I do have a 16-35. In fact, it's actually the one that I'm shooting this video on right now, so I might take this off at some point and go out and use that. But if I was shooting somewhere really big, really busy, where I really wanted to remain anonymous, I definitely would consider using this. Because when it just fits in your hand like this, you can shoot away and no one knows what you're doing. I do like quite a lot of the shots that I took on this little photo walk. I mean, fine, I probably wouldn't put them into my professional portfolio, but that's largely because they are so different to what I normally do. I just think they'd stick out a little bit. But I sometimes really do like playing with my own style and trying something that's a little bit different. And this definitely has been that, and it has honestly given me a little bit of inspiration about future things that I might want to try. But I've had this GoPro for quite a while, and largely it's just been one of my video tools. I've used it for filming things here, I've mounted it to cars, I've used it as a chest mount to film POV videos, but I've never really bothered putting it into the camera mode and seeing what I can get with it. And it may well be that you've got one of these or a couple of them knocking around that you use to go on bike rides every so often, and if so, then I definitely encourage you to just give it a try, take it out and see what you can get. And if you do, then please definitely share the results with me on Instagram with @BatteryHQ. But that brings me to an end of today's video. I really hope you've enjoyed it. A little bit different, a little bit quirky, but hopefully still fun enough to justify watching until this point. If you have enjoyed the video, then do please give it a like, and of course consider subscribing to my channel if you don't already, and I will see you next time.